Welcome aboard the WorkplaceWhiz, your audio gateway to the modern workplace. We designed this podcast as the place to discuss strategies, best practices, and share industry insights with our expert guests. This program is brought to you by Yarooms, the workplace experience platform. I'm Cosmin, Patlageanu, marketing professional and published author, and today we'll delve into how enhanced wayfinding can foster a positive organizational culture, improve employee engagement, and optimize facility management. Join us as we uncover the hidden value of window mapping in creating an accessible, efficient, and engaging workplace environment. With me today, I have Michael Pasket. Michael has extensive experience and knowledge within the GIS and window mapping space. Having started his career working and leading the partnerships and sales on the window mapping team at Google, he transitioned to MappedIn to help grow and lead the sales team. Over the past 10 years, he's been working in the indoor mapping space and obviously became an expert working through various unique use cases and developing a keen sense for best practices when guiding their clients towards the best possible decisions. Michael obviously has worked with the world's largest properties and prestigious property owners with huge portfolios, ensuring their needs are met for their unique required solutions. So welcome, Michael. It's fabulous to have you on our podcast.
Thank you, Yarooms. Very excited for this conversation. It's a pleasure.
Fantastic. So when we talk about visibility in the workplace, it's normally about people getting noticed and your work getting noticed and acknowledged. But here's a different angle, a different way to understand the concept, and it's basically related to seamless navigation, wayfinding or easy wayfinding, and employee and visitor experience in the office. So just to make to give an example and make like sort of a parallel, thinking about how difficult it is to drive when it's foggy, right? So not being able to actually see where you're going makes it risky. And the same idea kind of applies to the office. It's hard to see where you're going. It's hard to find the things that you need. It can cause a lot of nuisance and problems and make the whole experience less pleasant for everyone. So for instance, without the clear signage or intuitive layout design, when you navigate the complex office space, it can be frustrating for both the new employees and the visitors because they can't really make where they're going. So this can lead to people being late for meetings, having like a general sense of disorientation, and then it probably ends up in something like avoiding certain areas of the office altogether. Now, obviously, poorly designed or inadequately communicated spaces can have as a result the underutilization of certain areas, which we know it's a significant issue for organizations because they pay a premium fee for that office space, which doesn't get used. Of course, another example would be in a case of an emergency, if the signage isn't clear visible, then obviously it can have difficult results. But thinking how this kind of visibility is also a key component of visual communication in the workplace. So basically, we know that humans process images much faster than text. So what information is transmitted to the brain in a visual manner, then it's showing much more effectiveness rather than other data processing. I got some questions starting from this. So, what would be the examples of friction that you normally see in offices?
Absolutely, and it's a great question. It's something that we get asked quite frequently across many different venue types, and specific to offices, it kind of boils into three different components. So the first one is just the overall naming or how the space is constructed or where things are structurally within the facility. And some examples of that are like the naming of rooms are not in an orderly fashion. The zones or pods of individuals or teams are not like intuitive to where. So you might have HR next to sales, or you might have sales next to dev, when in reality, if sales and marketing work closely consistently, they should probably be sitting next to one another, right? As well as, and this one we do see a lot, is people do like to spruce up their office. They like to add art. They like to add furniture. They like to add different components to make it visually appealing. there is a fine line that I find to where some offices will over embellish and over add within that, which can cause a lot of visual like overstimulation, but also hides key components that help with the wayfinding needs. So that's number one, is just like overall the structural layout, the naming convention of spaces within a workplace. Number two that we find is in general, and this goes outside of indoor venues, outside of, properties, is humans tend to be a creature of habit. And what I mean by that is they typically know what's close to them. You go to the same grocery store that's in your neighborhood. You go to the same gym. You go to the same school. Like, we typically know what's around us. And the moment we need to explore somewhere that's out of that space, that comfort zone, without some kind of a tool to assist you in getting there, it starts to add into the fight or flight, or you start to get really nervous about where you need to go because it's foreign, right? So that applies within the workplace. Most individuals will stay within their pod. They'll stay within their individual zone. They'll go to the same kitchen, go to the same restroom. The moment they have a meeting on the other side of the office and another side of the campus, they start to freak out hours before, trying to frantically figure out how to get there. And if they have back-to-back meetings, that's not really something they can do. So by the time they're to the meeting, it's not a good feeling, and they start to panic a little bit. So that's number two. It's creatures of habit. Last one is something that a lot of individuals don't typically think about in terms of an office environment, and I boil it down to accessibility needs. So thinking about individuals with vision impairment, color blindness, accessibility needs, saying, oh, you should just go, it's just the left side of the office, right? And they pull up, maybe a paper map, and it's in very bright colors. And if an individual has color blindness, has visual impairment, has accessibility needs, and it's like on the second level, they themselves start to get nervous, because these are things that haven't been considered for these select individuals. And it does play a part in their life, but also within the office environment, because this individual could be a key component for this meeting. And now they have an additional couple of, not steps, but a couple of different things to think about prior to getting to this meeting. That's boils back into the creatures of habit outside of their comfort zone, and then boils back into the poor planning that wasn't planned for, right? So those would be the three main friction points that I typically see within just very large venues, but specific to workplaces.
Fantastic points. So now a little bit to the first one, because I remember many times we as the marketing department have been involved, in naming some areas, a little bit of design for others. And now that you mention it, I wish I knew this back then when we named many of the meeting rooms after European capitals, for instance, like major cities. There wasn't any logic behind them, but the concept was really neat, right? So they would all look beautiful. They had a theme with some symbolistic or some important buildings from that area, a little bit of map. But yeah, eventually, if you don't know where they are, or you don't learn where they are, there isn't an underlying logic that takes you from A to B, right? So from the reception area towards the meeting room. So how do you actually how do you deal with creativity? Because people want offices to be customized. They want to be different. They want to be as interesting as possible.
Yep, absolutely. There's really two thoughts behind this. One is like the pre-planning of the naming convention of the actual structural component of where things are. The problem with that is many companies are limited because they'll enter into an office or lease into an office, and the structural component is set. The meeting room naming convention may or may not be set, but they're moving in and they need to do something to change those meeting rooms. So there are certain factors that a company within a workplace or an office can't control. And that's where the visual component that you mentioned beforehand, and giving employees a tool to assist them within their constraints is quite effective and quite crucial. I would almost say needed. And that kind of goes within the portion that MappedIn excels in, would be the digital mapping side of things. But more specifically, it's really giving the employees a tool by the company to explore, to discover, and really to get to where they need to be through the use of a map at any given time across multiple devices that's comfortable for them. So that way you're not, pulling hair to try and get someone to use a tool. They can use it across whatever device they want, right?
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to mitigate it, because on one hand you don't want to have something like a boring naming and then everything from A to Z, so
Exactly.
they are in a logical sequence. But at the same time, you want people to be able to get there on time, right? And obviously, the point about accessibility is something that all of us should take into account when designing the area. Things get a little bit complicated, as you mentioned, once you get an office which has everything already set. So then it gets trickier. So I would assume that a tool or technology actually plays a role here in helping you decide where to have the meeting. If you have someone on the meeting who's got accessibility problems, then most definitely you will pick a room which is kind of friendly for the specific meeting, right?
Absolutely. And even going one step further, and this is within our tool, is every single location and every single wayfinding journey is a specific link. And there's optionality to turn on accessibility mode to route individuals to the elevator as opposed to the stairs, or like specific ramps for accessibility needs. Because each individual link is unique, you can quite literally send this individual that might have accessibility needs this specific link saying, hey, we're going to meet. I understand the left side of the office, this campus is foreign. Here's an accessible, friendly route for you to do. And let me know if you need help. And they can have that on their phone, on a web browser, whatever it might be, and quite literally bring it with them. So they can navigate the facility in a way that meets their needs and is friendly for how they want to view it.
I like all this friendliness concept within the offices, and not only. I mean, I'm going back now when I was a student, and our university had classrooms across different campuses, and you'd never know basically where they are. And one of them was within another university, and you'd never know the floor. You had to run, and the bus wouldn't come in time. And I would have loved to have that sort of technology in my pocket back then, right? So it would have solved a million problems. We're getting back a little bit to the business area. So how would you say that all these friction points that you mentioned impact employee productivity and satisfaction overall? So apart from the obvious frustration that builds up because you don't know where to go.
Absolutely. Oh, it's immense. And I'll even take it outside of the workplace. And like, we've all been there. And using your example, I have the exact same example of university. One of my first, and I believe it was like an economics class. It was in room 201. And I thought the naming convention was the room 101s are on floor 1, the 201s are on floor 2. That wasn't the convention. So I was late to the meeting. I was running around. I couldn't find the room. I was frustrated. And by the time I got to the classroom, I was just drained, right? And people feel that in the offices. They feel it in airports. So you're running to your gate, you're trying to catch a coffee before your flight, just to find out there's no coffee right before your flight. There's no food. You're catching a layover. It's just like there's no tools within that environment at that time, and having something accessible to use in your comfort as you're navigating these places helps to take down that fight or flight and give a calm mind when going through these situations, right? And so what I find in the workplace side of things is getting to, like, you really want employees to be able to do their job, to do their work, right? Navigating the office, you don't want that to be part of their job. So giving them a tool that allows them to work and do their job is essential. And that goes across all software, all technology, but really funnels into the wayfinding component of being able to take that friction point out and allow your employees to do their job. And it really promotes the satisfaction, because the thought of being late, scrambling to find a meeting room, You could have a meeting with, your boss's boss who you've never met on the far side of the campus and you have no idea where that is. And he's like, oh, it's in the Amazon rainforest room. That doesn't mean anything to you, right? Because you're outside of your comfort zone. So now you're trying to scramble, look at a paper map, look at the fire exits, and it's just, it doesn't work. So it's really the tool that helps to alleviate that portion of it. So you can go into that meeting with your boss's boss, as using the same example, calm, collected, and more importantly, satisfied that you can do your job within that environment.
I love that airport example, and it's something that we can all relate to, right?
Oh, it's the worst.
You're the first time in an airport, right? So you don't know where to go, and you look and say, yeah, the gates are that way. But all the gates are that way. You don't, at some point in time, you have to turn a left or a right, but you never know where exactly.
Yep.
But you see that only 3 of them are still there. The others have vanished. You try to go back, nothing there. You go further, and you always add the time pressure. Everything is time sensitive in an airport, right? Because you have many times you have short connections, and you need to run basically. Running in an airport is horrible because you end up also somewhere. You have a 4 hours flight to somewhere. It's like, as you mentioned, draining.
Yep, and I would even relate that to the offices, and it's a very good point you make with the time pressure, and then just like the sweating, the anxiety feeling, and the time pressure relates to a meeting. Everyone has their 30-minute blocks, maybe an hour block. Boom, 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 boom. That's typically what an individual's day is in the office. And we see it, people are 5 minutes late, a couple minutes late to a meeting, but that trickles, right? And every time that trickles, all of a sudden that last meeting, you don't have any time. And if you need to consistently bounce around campus, run, and you don't know where to go, it just adds to that time, creating that inefficiency on top of, the sweat we all feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that it's always visible. So we tend, in a hybrid working system, we tend to use the time in the office many other days for meetings, for one-on-one meetings, for face-to-face meetings, because it's something that you lack on normal day-to-day remote setting, if you like.
Absolutely.
So you would like to meet people face-to-face, but that means you often don't have any time left for anything else. And if you need to run from one place to the other, then you need to take all the necessary measures so you're not late. I'm one of the guys who are very, very rarely late, and I like the others being on time. So I don't appreciate when people get late. However, I'm mindful of their calendars as well, so I try to, just not block like 1 hour, so I'm sure that they don't have any time left. I condense it into 30 minutes, 45 minutes, but sometimes you need to get from there to there. And people will just block your calendar because, they saw you got like 15 minutes. It's enough time for you to get from there to there.
Yep, it's not always the case. And I'm with you. I empathize. It's always, if you're early, you're on time. And if you're on time, you're late, kind of that whole notion.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Exactly. So I wanted to ask you, taking all this into account, so you need to have a fancy office. You need people to like it. It's got to be visually appealing, and then it's got to work for its intended purpose. So how can organizations prioritize visibility without compromising on the other essential aspects?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And it's a very good point, because it is a balance. But one of the things, if you have everything preset, or if you're considering this balance, is really thinking about the digitization of your assets. And what I mean by that is moving things into a digital environment to give users different methods to view these digital assets and to work within a workplace. So what we often see is, yes, there's this whole digitization effort kind of worldwide of like digitizing certain things. What I find is maps are typically a crucial component of that. A couple reasons why. One would be the maintenance of said map. Maps are fantastic. They are the best. However, the moment they're inaccurate, they're useless, right? So one of the things, and the example could be, oh, you're running to a meeting, you've got 5 minutes. I'm going to hit the coffee shop. Perfect. It's 2 minutes this way. You get there, it turns out the coffee shop moved to the other side and the map you were using said it was over there, right? So one of the things specifically on the digitization that our tool helps, we provide an easy to use tool to make these changes within a venue and have that flow into the output of all of your maps, all of your digital maps. So now users can use the maps in a digital format. The maps will be accurate because your company, the facilities, marketing, whoever is maintaining it, can easily make these changes and have them flow in a moment's notice into that front end experience. But then going into one step further, and I mentioned this beforehand, employees can view this in a method that is comfortable for them, whether it be, they're over planner, they're pre-planning, they need to view it on a desktop and kind of see where they need to go. Cool, perfect. Desktop can do that in a digital map. Or the person that maybe they're planning want to take it with them, or they're just frantically trying to figure it out, pull it up on their mobile phone, smartphone, boom, you can have that as well. And then there's even the variety of being able to slap that onto like a digital kiosk, a totem, digital signage, depending on where you are in the world. It's called different things, but it's the giant touch screen, more or less. Being able to view that. The important part here is that digital asset that I mentioned beforehand in the MappedIn tool. The companies that are maintaining it, it flows to all three of those different touch points. So it's all accurate. And moving one step forward, it reduces the work to maintain one. You're only doing a one-to-many approach. And then your employees have the benefit of knowing every single one of those outputs is going to be the same, and they can feel confident. Because that's another thing that I haven't mentioned yet, is you want your employees to feel confident that the tools they're using are going to work. The moment an individual goes all the way across campus to meet with someone to find the Amazon rainforest room, just to find out it's not actually over there, it's on the other side because they just moved it, they're never going to use whatever tool you have again. So giving the companies that tool to create that confidence, that accurate map, then creates confidence in the employees saying, this is going to work. I can trust and use this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just thinking now, that's a surefire way of making sure people never use your solution again. I'm a lot into fishing, and when you go out on the water, you basically, by the time you learn your way around, you need maps, obviously, or you need a guide or somebody who knows the area. But some things move, the wind blows, so you see structures move around, and the whole topography will change.
Yep.
That's fairly difficult to maintain, in terms of maps accuracy. But it's not the case with an office, right? So if you move the rainforest meeting room someplace else, it hasn't moved on its own, right? So somebody has done that change. So I like this approach that you can immediately have an update of the map saying, it's moved. So when I go, if I bother to check where I'm going, then I'll know it has moved to someplace else. But yeah, I mean, it's many times I'm thinking of maps as being almost close to magical. All the areas that have been unknown to man. So speaking of years before Christopher Columbus and the great explorers, they would have dragons. They would have all sorts of things on the areas on the map where they didn't know what was there. I'm fairly sure it's not the case anymore. So now you can have basically any map of any given area. Why shouldn't you have a map of your own office? But I'm thinking, do you need a special skill? Because if you want to read a map when you're out at the sea, and you have like a traditional map and nothing else, so no electronic devices and stuff, you need some skills basically. How about now? I mean, if I want to go to the rainforest meeting room, do I need some special skills?
That's a great question. And it is slightly biased in the fact that, it depends on how that map is created. If it's a paper, PDF, signage, security map, something of that nature, it needs to be created in a way that a user can view, right? MappedIn specifically, all of our maps are created in a way, the UI, the look and feel, the elements of the map, to create a good experience for anyone and everyone. So they don't need those skills. They can pick up quite literally any of our maps across any of our industries and use it without needing to know what each individual button means, what each individual, do I need to push this or this? Like, it's all very intuitive and user friendly. And, it's evolved a long time. It's a great point you meant, because typically you had to be a mapping expert. There had to be a legend. This means this means this. What we're finding now across all venues is a digital map for users is really becoming the de facto, in the fact that, like, users of maps in general are so used to outdoor maps in a digital format, but the indoor formats have been on the slower side to adopting it, just because they're like, oh, paper map's fine. But within the past, like 5, I would even say 7 years, we've really seen users almost demanding it, because they're used to a certain way, and going towards the digital map format. They want something that's easy to use. They don't need to learn, and it's all something that we have created, so they don't need to. They can just pick it up and use. Doesn't matter the office, doesn't matter the user.
That's great. So I was thinking, about the indoor mapping overall. I was like, probably it's best for warehouses, right? You need to know where you can take some stuff from, what shelf it should be on. It kind of made more sense to me that was like the main use case. But seemingly, and after studying the problem, it's like every office should have it, because you have the newcomers, right? We always start with the bias that you know your way around the office, and things change so rarely, it doesn't really matter. But that's not entirely true. And when we're talking about an employee experience, we're not only talking about our experiences, we're talking about the newcomers' experience. And the last thing you'd like is to have your newcomers feel lost, disoriented in the middle of the reception. Where do I go now? What do I do next? Who am I supposed to ask? Because there's nobody here now.
Absolutely. And it's actually a great point, and it's a use case that we help solve for, mainly because it's, to your point, everyone assumes, oh, I know my way around the office. You've been here forever. It may or may not be true. Go back to that human comfort zone, right? What we find is, what better way to show that your company cares about employees, cares about, you don't need to know where to go. Here's a tool. It'll be easy to get there. But what better way to show the employees that's a thing than onboarding? And one of the things that we suggest, and a lot of our workplace customers do, is, and this goes back to the point of each individual leak is unique. Location, wayfinding journey. You can create a multi-step wayfinding journey for a new employee. So you can say, this is the parking lot you should park in. It'll wayfind you to, this is the lobby you check in. This is orientation room. This is the desk you sit at. And this is your boss's desk, all within one specific link. So, and then you email it to that individual, so they get a specifically curated link of the map of the office they're about to go to. So it takes that friction on the first day out of their lives, and they can easily, get to where they need to go. But more importantly, feel comfortable on that first day in a job, so they can do their job, work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just taking one step further. I think this would be great for interviews as well, right? So you interview for a position in a new company, in a new campus or business center or whatever. You have no idea where everything is. How about if you eliminate from the very beginning all the stress associated with you not knowing where you're going? So that I think would be a great asset in the initial, even before onboarding, right? In initial interactions with the companies. So this is obviously a very good use case for HR departments. However, I'm kind of thinking that the whole indoor mapping area would be more on the facilities or operations side of things, because they're normally dealing with how the office looks like, how it's what's your interaction mostly? Is it more with the HR people? Is it more with the facilities or operation workplace?
Yep. It's a great question, and it really depends on the use case or what it is the the company is looking to do, we absolutely have direct line of sight with facilities. Typically for the wayfinding side, it's the employee experience, marketing, space planning, depending on how large the organization is. However, at the end of the day, facilities is the one that's constructing the maps, working day to day within said maps. They do normally work in CAD or their own software. And there's a couple of different things that we can help with that. One, if they're diehard, we're not changing CAD, perfect. There are ways that we can, depending on specific specs, take that CAD and automate the process so they still have that digital format, so they don't need to change their workflow. So these are potentially two different flows. The second one could be CAD's can be very complicated. You typically need a degree, it can be difficult to work in. And so what better way to give people more time to do their job than to give a tool that's easy, that someone doesn't necessarily need it, or they don't need a degree, and they can make changes in the matter of seconds, have that flow into the front end, and then have a good experience on said front end through a digital map. And then that goes to different use cases, which, wayfinding, asset tracking, occupancy tracking, like desk reservation, like all these things require a map, but require it to be accurate. And that's where we usually have direct line of sight with facilities, because ultimately they tend to be the ones maintaining it, and the day-to-day, not users, but the maintenance team. Again, depends on the size of the company, but that's typically where we have those conversations with end clients.
Right. So speaking of use cases, could you share one or two of, one of most exotic or unusual? Obviously, they're all tailored to specific customers' needs. Yep. But what would be some interesting use cases you've been working on?
Oh, it's a great question. And I could go on and on for this entire podcast on all the different use cases. Really what we find is a lot of use cases, even ones that I've never seen and, come up brand new each day. A lot of things require, and this is what you spoke about at the beginning, that visual element. People are visual people, and they need data layered on top of something visual to get a good understanding of what is actually going on in said environment. Specifically, in some very interesting use cases, is there's always the asset tracking, and asset tracking goes into one of two things: people or things. Are we tracking the people? And not on the creepy side, but I'll just say like security. Being able to track where security guards are at any given time, and then toggle a portion of the map to say, hey, emergency situation here, and security guards can see that. They know where their relative coworkers are, and then you can, at like an HQ level, see that the security guards are traveling towards said destination on a map. So that's the people side of things. Or even just things, goes into warehouses, what you mentioned, but being able to track where pallets are visually on a map, even in an airport, like bag tracking, being able to understand where suitcases are at any given time, or like loading devices or things of that nature. So that's within the asset tracking component. We do also see some of the things that are along the lines of like occupancy tracking, being able to, using sensor data, understand the occupancy of an environment, and then being able to, through analytics and on top of our maps, understand usage of areas, but then even going one step further, potentially toggling like cleaning. So being able to create thresholds where, hey, this environment, this restroom shouldn't be cleaned until we've had 100 people walk through the store. You can visually see that. And then the cleaning crews can go ahead and say, hey, this specific restroom on this side of the facility needs to be cleaned because it had that threshold met. So those are some of the super interesting ones. We also have, like, within the workplace side, like obviously the desk reservation, the visitor management side of things. Those ones we see are very visual oriented, because I can, as an example, I can book desk 4729D. What does that mean to me? Like that, I don't know the naming convention of facilities for desks. So being able to visualize, I want to sit at this desk next to my friend and it has a window, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we're talking about reservations, be them desks or small offices or meeting rooms, it's always important to know who's around you. You mentioned with creatures of habit, obviously. And whenever I go back to the office, I want to meet my team, right? I want to stay next to them. I want to stay next to the people that I work with on a regular basis. I want to catch up with some people I haven't seen in a while.
Yep.
So having that sort of information is crucial. But then again, everything's got to be somewhere visually explaining to me where where that specific desk is. So I want to know if it's in the middle of the floor plan or it's somewhere close to a window. Maybe I like natural light. I want to see that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, but going a little bit further, you mentioned data as being super important, and obviously in those use cases is crucial. But how often do you encounter this? So a new or potential client coming to you saying, "Hey, I want to have more data on utilization on this area." Do people really go through there when they go to whatever place, or do they actually interact with this area at all? Is it something that you see frequently?
Absolutely. We definitely, because data in this day and age is something that comes up all the time, right? It's very important, but what's more important is being able to understand said data, visualize said data, and then what do you do with said data, right? And that really flows all the way down through that like data funnel. It comes up more and more frequently, and like it's a multi-pronged approach, because typically, like, how are you collecting the data? Is it sensors? Is it Wi-Fi? Like those kind of things. How are you visualizing that data? Is it a dashboard? Is it a map? Typically we see like all these different things conglomerating into this overall package to then give a full picture of an environment, of a venue, of what it is that data they're looking on. So that way a company can make strategic decisions based on all of that information. So as an example, put sensors into every meeting room. You can understand, connecting that data to our maps, the occupancy of specific meeting rooms. And you can find out, hey, all of our meeting rooms on the left side of the office are being utilized more frequently than the right side. Why is that? Should we be trying to figure out ways to have the right side be utilized more? Or is, development or like individuals that require a quiet side of the office more important, and they happen to be on the right side? So it's really just getting an understanding of what's going on and then making your strategic decisions based off that.
No, you just you made me think about the large shopping malls and the way the escalators go, right? And which way. And at the very beginning, I was like, "This is counterintuitive. It shouldn't be like this. I want to get out quickly." But then again, you as the owner of that space, you don't want people to go away quickly. On the contrary, you want them to linger around as long as possible, because that's how they're more prone to actually buying stuff. But we're actually talking about the employee experience here, right? So let's consider office space. We also had this question from our customers saying, "Hey, does your data show which areas are used or not?" Because I'm thinking a little bit of downsizing, conscious about the costs and everything else. And we figure that areas of the office are never actually used, and with some automations, you can actually have like the lights dimmed in that particular area, or if nobody's in the parking lot, so no reason why the lights should be on. Considering this sustainability angle, how do you think the whole indoor mapping area fits?
It fits quite well, and it goes to like the commercial cleaning example I mentioned, or like what you're referring to, like the ESG, the environmental social governance. It's a very hot topic in the EU, and it's flowing into like North America. It's a big thing, right? Net neutrality by, I think it's 2050, and the EU at some point. And the way indoor maps play into that is a couple, like obviously the wayfinding employee experience, but it's the visualization of being able to do stuff for your employees, but also adding sensor data, adding, is this area being utilized? Yes or no? If not, create threshold to turn off lights, or the cleaning crew, send cleaning crew to this place, work ticketing. This air conditioning unit is broken. If it's a big facility, well, which air conditioning unit, which vent? Visualize, you can show exactly where that specific thing is, so facilities can go and change that specific vent. So we see, and it goes back to like, the visual component that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, is people are very visual. Like it goes from the picture books we read as children all the way up to, maps, I'll just say. We tend to absorb knowledge through pictures quickly. And it's something that when, you're doing your job, you want to be able to understand something quickly without needing to ask questions and just know, oh, it's this vent over on this side of the office next to Michael, just because Michael sits at those steps because his name's right there.
Absolutely. So I see this going a little bit into the preemptive management. So when something is up, people notice it the first, right? Because we don't have like an army of facilities people going every day, all around the office. But if people tend to, go away from a specific area, maybe the lights are working properly, or the air conditioning, as you mentioned, or maybe it's too hot in the summer next to the windows. You need to change those, right? What are the challenges normally when you're thinking about? I have this traditional sort of an office approach, and I want to digitize everything. What would be the challenges that I'm facing as a new customer?
Absolutely. I would say one of the biggest challenge is analysis paralysis and not doing anything. It's like there's so much to be done, right? There's just, do you do work ticketing, desk reserve, like all these different things. And what I typically mention to our potential clients are just having conversations with individuals. Take out the whole sales hat off is like consulting or just like guiding them. What is it we should do first, Michael? And really it's like think about what all of these have in common, like digitizing some form of an asset. They usually all refer to a map, and like the crawl, walk, run, being able to crawl quickly, digitize your map, have an easy tool, and then let's start thinking about what matters. The wayfinding component, yes, that's within the component, but what are your employees asking for now that they have this asset? Now that you have this asset, can you connect it to desk reservation and invest in that? Can you connect to space utilization and occupancy tracking? Can you connect to like the use cases go on and on? But because there's so many use cases, individuals are just like, hold up, that's 12 things. I'm one individual. I can't do that. Whereas digitizing that map, their assets of their offices, it's easy. It's easy to maintain and manage because of our tool. Your employees de facto get, or they not de facto, they do get a wayfinding map within there. And then you can start to critically think like, okay, what is next? What are doing surveys? What are employees requesting? Like, this is great, but I wish I could sit next to my friend, Michael. Perfect. Triggers desk reservation, right? Or like this side of the office is always occupied. Perfect. Why is it? Get occupancy tracking and things of that nature. Like that's really the one thing that I see is they know they want everything, and that's fine. We can absolutely do the, dive into the deep end, but it can be a lot, and it all ultimately does require some form of a digital asset that's maintainable easily. So why not just get started with the low-hanging fruit, something quick, and then strategically think about what's next, crawl, and then move into the walk of what's the next, and then run, the blue sky dreaming. What is next?
I like the step-by-step approach because it can be, I think, a little bit intimidating. All of a sudden, I only have like a map I designed in Draw or something like that, if it still exists. So how am I going to get from that to those fancy 3D maps that I'm seeing all over the place, right? So probably knowing that there is an easy beginning, let's call it, with ease everybody's interaction. So now I'm thinking, when we discuss digital transformation, and this has been like a hot topic for quite a while now, everybody kind of understands a different thing. I remember one of our clients from one of the previous companies I used to work for, he got on a Friday afternoon/evening a call from his boss saying, hey, we should digitally transform. And I think you're the fabulous guy to do it. And the guy was like, sure, boss. Yeah, of course. And he spent his weekend and the evening and everything until Monday morning looking for what digital transformation meant, right? And it meant different things for, all kinds of different things for all kinds of different people and companies. And he discovered one of the use cases that we put together and was like really nicely, walk you through sort of a content. And he reached out and said, can have like a short conversation. I need to understand a little bit of the process, and eventually they become our clients, and that's how I learned actually the whole process. But I have to give you that, when I'm thinking of digital transformation, probably one of the last areas I'm thinking is actually digitizing the maps that I have into, from pen and paper or whatever sort of PDF I have at hand, which is a very, very basic drawing of the whole office, because maybe I need it for like security reasons and stuff. Why do you think that is? I mean, is it something that's now picking up speed? Is it? Why do you think that happens?
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question, and we see it all the time. It could be because of a couple of reasons, and obviously depends on a company. Like a lot of the employee experience, obviously you want a good one, but the mapping component is fueled by facilities, and facilities tends to, I won't say they're siloed, but they typically have their own world they work in, and it doesn't really mesh into the employee experience. Just it's considered like back of house, right? So that's one component of it. The second component is there's always this mentality that like tried and true, what's working is working. But then what's working is working as individuals are going into Adobe Illustrator to maintain a map. It's taking like hours upon hours to make one simple change, or days within CAD. And then it's going into whatever workflow. And it tends to be by the time that workflow is over and it's live in 2 weeks, something's changed. So then it's like this cyclical circle to where it's just never ending, which could be fine. I would suggest not, but it's really going into the easy tools using AI and machine learning to digitize said map, something MappedIn can help with, giving easy tools to where anyone from, an intern or a co-op all the way up to C-levels, they don't really need training to use our tools. They can just go in and maintain said maps. So a lot of it is kind of the de facto, facilities will handle it. They're like that's another team's kind of thing, which I don't necessarily fully always agree with. Because ultimately a lot of these use cases do require a map, and then they'll just ping facilities, hey, I need a map. And then the map goes over there. It's out of date, blah, 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 blah. So that's definitely a couple of the reasons. I would say another one of the reasons is like this apprehensive for the change, right? It goes back to the tried and true. But they're individuals are not always willing to make the change, even if it's going to make their life easier. Like we've quite literally had individuals, companies where they maintain their maps in, and I'm going to forget it, like basically like a PowerPoint, and they're just drawing lines. And it's like, oh, this is our facility. Like, A, how long did that take you to do? B, maintaining that must be a nightmare. C, give that to us. I'll spin that around and however long it'll take. And now you can make your changes in seconds and have a really nice map on the front end.
I was actually thinking on resistance to change as being one of the challenges to overcome, and then the readiness or how quickly people adopt new technologies. And if, for instance, like you mentioned in sales and marketing, we always play with the newest stuff, right? Because it kind of gives us a competitive edge. You can automate this. Yes, thank you very much. Take it, automate it for me. Could be like the power of habit, as you mentioned initially at the beginning of the podcast, because we're creatures of habit. But I think once people see it happening someplace else, they're gonna receive a request saying, "Hey, I need you to digitally transform the way we move around the office." Right? Mm-hmm. That's something that I could see happening. So we mentioned technology. So looking at the future. You talked about sensors, occupancy sensors, maybe temperature and so on. What would be the emerging technologies that you see playing a role in the next generation of window mapping?
That's a great question. Oh, that's a great question. One of the things that, we're at MappedIn heavily investing in is like the tooling for the maintenance and creation of said maps. So we're heavily investing in AI and machine learning to create said maps. So plugging in, just like taking a picture of a fire safety map on the side of your office, just with your phone, uploading it and pushing a magic button, and it'll digitize it in a matter of seconds, then giving an output to the map. That's magic. That's, the bleeding edge of technology. And then from there, using a tool to where you just click your mouse to maintain said maps. There's even going one step further using LiDAR. So being able to, again, with a smartphone, being able to download the MappedIn app on the iOS store and then use this to go around your room, go around your office, and have that space be digitized in a 3D environment, and then have that be pushed into that exact same tool so you can maintain it. So if you don't have a map, that's no problem. If you have a smartphone with our app downloaded, go ahead and digitize it that way. It's very cool. That's on the mapping side, and that's where we're investing, is the tooling, mapping for everyone kind of mentality. And then going from there, because that part is easy now, that part we're solving is easy, you can really think about all these other technologies to layer data on top of it. And I think that's where everything's heading, is easy maintenance of a digital asset map. And then the second component is like data visualization or data on top of said map, whether it be like sensors or video or whatever for occupancy tracking, or sensors for wait times, like all those other things that we weren't able to do at one point are now able to do, and we're doing it. But understanding why it's important, that's a big key. And some of the use cases of stadiums, wait time for the restroom. We've all been there. It's halftime. We need to use the restroom. You go to the wrong one because it's a 15-minute wait. You got to go. The one around the corner has a 0-minute wait, but you don't know that, right? So being able to layer that data on top of the map, that's crucial. We've probably all been there. That's just one example. So really, it's like those two components is the AI and ML, machine learning side of things and I'll just say within MappedIn, the map creation and map digitization and the flexibility of the output. And then on the other side, it's like layering different pieces of information to make that map interesting, usable, employee or like user friendly. Like the list goes on and on, but really it's like ease of use, I would say.
I'm really looking forward to seeing, when I'm driving, I see this AR thingy on top of the map, and then the camera goes on and then shows you this is the street you're supposed to turn right on. Because otherwise Waze will say, or whatever navigation system will say, in 30 or 300 meters. And then it kind of depends on how fast you go. And oops, you missed it. But I would really love to see all that technology, on a stadium, because that's all in an airport. We've all been there, sure.
It's absolutely true. And I'll even go one step further and mention that like you can quite literally go to our website, sign up for free for the map creation and map tooling side of things to give our machine learning and the AI that I mentioned beforehand a try. Like map your home, map whatever floor plan you have, give it a try. Like it's not just me as a sales individual pitching this, like it's really there. You can sign up right now and use it.
I think that's the positive note that we needed for the conclusion of the podcast, because I think many would be like, but it's got to be super expensive, right? Or it's got to be super complicated. Well, guess what? Not necessarily.
Nope. Try it right now. It's free.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Michael, for all these valuable insights. And I'm looking forward for your future developments.
Thank you so very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you soon then.
Absolutely.